Hello, everybody. So it has been brought to my attention that we do not know a lot of terms in Goons, which, if we don't know the term, we probably don't know how to do it either. So I'm going to take this video, it's going to be really boring, and we're just going to go over some shit, using some strat sketch and some in-game shit. So I've got JT helping me. He's just going to kind of sit. I've got a list of terms I want to go over. So I think first we'll go over the really easy shit. What are some of these terms that you guys didn't all know? Okay, we'll start with hold down. Aye. What's a hold down? For anyone who has not played the game and who has not played World of Tanks ever and is just starting today, you're on tier 1, but you're somehow in Goons. Here's what a hold down is. You get your hull literally out of sight of the enemy with some hard cover. Alright, so there's the first one. Let's cross that one off my list. We've got some... we've got screen cap, which we were talking about. Alright, well, let's talk about that. We're going to go to the strat sketch here for this one. So, say you are capping the red cap, you're the green team, okay? And you have 2 mediums, or a couple heavies, and this one has the most cap points, so these guys are sitting in front of him, right? So if they do get reset, it's not the guy with the most cap points that gets farmed. And you have a couple guys here, and you've got 2 mediums right here, and say they have a couple mediums over here who are pushing in like this, and they've got 4 tanks controlling this ridge or something, and then say you've got maybe you've got a couple more on this offside, because if you're capping, you're probably already going to win, or you're looking to win fast. All right, so you're capping, okay, and say the rest of their team is all over here, okay, so you're fast capping, that's your win condition, and say they're coming back, okay, or they're pushing on to cap, okay, but you're on cap first. So what do we need to do? How do we screen cap? So the first thing everybody's going to see is, okay, well, these guys are playing on cap together. That's good. These two 907s, how are we going to screen cap here? Well, the obvious play is we're just going to literally throw ourselves at these mediums, right? And we're going to literally look to ram them and block them and just really be a nuisance, right? So when I'm talking blocking, if you look, like what I'm going to go do to JT here, who's come up into the mid, when I'm going to screen cap and if he's looking for shots, I am going to look for shots, but I'm more importantly literally just looking to fuck with him, right? Say he's here and he's looking for shots. I'm coming in like this. I'm raising my gun, right? I'm making sure he's not going to get the shots. I'm banging into his tank, right? I'm going to put the shots in. I'm not going to pen him here, so I'll just shoot him at the turret. But that's what I'm going to do. Getting him not to move. Right, so I'm coming in like this, and I'm doing whatever I can to make sure he doesn't get that reset. On this particular map, maybe if I've got more engine power, I'm just ramming him down the ridge, right? So that's the first way, but the more keen-eyed of you, or people who pay attention, should realize that, well, these guys are on the ridge too, so this is the obvious screen, right? You're literally screening like this, and actually this reminds me, we need to talk about screening in other tanks too, light tanks. The play for these guys is to just over push like this, okay? So these guys can screen by YOLOing, right? And now this is when your win con is the cap, and these guys are all going to push into these guys, like I just did to JT, right? You might think, oh, I am going to get farm. Well, yeah, because they're shooting your guys on cap if they're lit, right? And they can actually light heavies from this ridge. So in this situation, like these guys would just YOLO in, right? And these guys would just, again, just YOLO like I did to JT. Because if we're capping and this is our win condition and we can't hold, right? There's a difference between being able to hold and cap and not being able to hold. In this situation, you see, you can't hold and cap, right? And by holding, I mean you just hold your positions. You can't hold here. This is obviously retarded, but you can't hold here and here and think you're going to get away with the cap, right? Because these guys will come in, say they have a scout, he'll YOLO in, and these guys can overpeak the ridge. Another term we're going to go over and get the reset. So that's what screening cap means. It means quite literally, think of yourself as the fucking a mobile shield for the guys on cap, and right, this guy can be a mobile shield for this guy too, right? It's not a direct shield, it's an indirect shield, right? So let's go over screening in general real quick. Now, what do I tell people when I say, and proc is a really good map for these terms because you can basically do anything. When we do a double EBR west strat, for example, and we'll be north, and we want to get an EBR into the E2 bush right here, okay? So when I tell one EBR to screen, what does that mean? It means this EBR is looking to get into this bush safely without getting lit. And screening for this guy means that the other EBR has to either play more aggro, or maybe it generally it's more aggro and deeper, and screen, right? Vision screen. This isn't the same as physical screening, it's a vision screen for this guy to get in the bush. So it might look like this guy is one grid behind him, and this guy comes out, wide peaks to make sure there's nothing bullshit going on here, and then is out, right? And now he screened this guy to get into the bush. So that's what I mean, and other people mean when you're screening in your light tanks, okay? Let's go over another term that I've used before. You're not really going to hear this one in game, but I talk about it. We all know what map control is. It's quite literally controlling the map, but we need to talk about indirect map control, which again, this is very much for light tanks. So consider you have, let's say an EBR in this bush, and you've got like two guys holding, and everyone else on your team is over here, right? So you don't have map control of the west, right? Really? But you have indirect map control. And what I mean by that is this EBR alone obviously cannot hold anything, right? If they want to take the 1-2 line from the south, they can do that. But we have indirect map control in the sense that anything that develops over here, we're going to see before it happens, which means we can react, right? Indirect map control means you know what is happening on that side of the map, right? Because you can see that an EBR playing here, if he's able to get here, gives you much more options than an EBR, say, who's back here, if the enemy does the same play and you do the same play in these, right? So you can see how, because this F1 isn't really map control compared to B1, but it is indirect map control, and that's what I mean by that. So with this EBR here, he could fall back, right? You start losing that map, but you're kind of seeing everything, and you're giving your caller and players time to react. And that's what I mostly mean by indirect map control. If that still doesn't make sense, I can understand why. You can PM me if you don't understand. So I think I've covered a couple of those. Let's go over peaking, right? We understand what peaking is. If the caller tells you to peak, and you say you're behind cover, and maybe the caller saw something you didn't, or say I'm scared to peek this position because I think there are going to be lots of tanks shooting me from over there, and the caller calls me to peek. Okay, I'm going to peek, get my shot in, right? Peek, bam, I shot, and that's me. I've peeked the whatever it is, peeking the ridge, peeking the rock, peeking the building, right? You should all understand what that means. You're literally just peeking, getting your shot, and presumably falling back. Now, the thing that people never seem to understand is overpeaking, okay? Now, when do you overpeak? Overpeaking is one of the best things you can do in this game if you do it correctly, but if you do it poorly, it's one of the worst things you can do, okay? So let's actually legitimately build this scenario. So I will be red this time, my team will be red, okay? And so JT's over on this ridge, okay? And say I have 4 tanks beside me right here like this, okay? Pretend there's literally 4 more 277s right beside me. And the caller tells us to overpeak. Well, what does that mean? It means he tells us to overpeak the ridge. I'll be more specific. It means we need to come all the way up to here and get the shot on JT. Now, why do we call it overpeaking? Well, because peaking implies you have some sort of cover, Whereas overpeaking means we know you're going to be in the open, we know you can get shot, but it's still worth it, right? So like I said, pretend I have a guy here, a guy here, and a guy here, and we're all over peaking at the same time. JT takes 2,000 damage instantly, right? This chieftain takes 2,000 damage instantly, and then we back off. Yes, we're going to take damage. Yes, everything in here will probably shoot us. Say we take 2,000 damage in return, okay? But the caller has decided that is worth it, right? To do. Plus, over peaking, you generally won't take as much damage as you think you will if you do it together, right? Because it's going to be so quick. If you're in sync, it's everyone's moving forward, everyone over peaks, you shoot, and you fall back, and you've literally quad tapped him or triple tapped him. So over peaking is very, very fucking important, and it's something we're going to have to work on, but you actually legitimately also have to be working as a group, and you really have to see where your other people are. Otherwise, what will happen, I'm sure you've all seen this, is like one guy will go or one guy won't, or one guy will like do a weird angle, and then like one guy will just get shit on, everyone else will get scared and they'll back down, and then this guy's taking no damage and we've lost a tank. So I'm sure you can see there why overpeaking can be one of the most effective and also one of the most detrimental things to your team. It's something we can work on, except right now I feel like we probably have more pressing things to work on and stuff like that. Although, if we want to get better, we will have to do that, and we will have to be doing it cohesively as a team. What do I want to go over next? Oh, okay, so simping. We talked about screening, now let's talk about simping. So screening is either trying to control vision to let someone take a position, right? Or cap screening, which we discussed. Basically, it's you just don't want the enemy team to be able to do something. All right? So that's what screening is. You don't want the enemy team to be able to do a specific thing, and that specific thing depends on what type of screening you do. Simping is not about the enemy team at all. It's all about your team, right? Say JT's a one-shot and he asked me to simp for him. Simping is making sure that JT can't die, okay? Sometimes that'll mean I will die, but if he's in a good position, like I think I've shown you before, but Sturv, S-Conk, and A1, the Sturv dies for the S-Conk, what gives him the hull down. That's fairly obvious how powerful that would be, right? So simping is very easy. You just make sure your teammate can't die. So maybe even on cap, someone will be like, hey, simp for me, I have the cap points, right? At that point, you're literally just making sure he can't get shot, and you're literally playing in front of him, right? So that's a big difference between screening and simping. Simping is basically going to be in front of your ally, whereas screening, you can screen from basically anywhere if you're smart about it. Next couple terms, let's go over echelon. Okay, so what's an echelon? Very simple. And echeloning and overpeaking kind of go hand in hand. This right here is a pretty good echelon, right? You're grouped up. You're right beside each other as close as you can without causing, driving issues, which is you should be able to get within a meter of each other, right? If you're playing smart, and you're just like basically a line, or if you're side scraping off of people, say you're side scraping off of this rock, right? This is an echelon, right? You're echeloned, and obviously you can pause it for a second. Where would this echelon be shooting? It would be shooting down here. So echelon should be a very, very easy term. And like I said, echelon and overpeak can go hand in hand, because before you overpeak, you have to echelon, okay? It's a must. Otherwise, you'll just go in one by one and do retard shit. So that should be easy. Let's go over baiting. So what if a teammate tells you to stop baiting? Well, what if JT and I are shooting down in here, okay? We have a UBR YOLO or 907 gun underneath, and now we're shooting here, okay? And we're just we're right here beside each other. In my puppy instincts make me want to rock back and forth, right? Do like the little puppy juke type of shit every time I fire, but that's not good, right? Look at what JT has to do every time I'm rocking back and forth. And obviously there's much better examples like on city maps and shit when you've got like 5 tanks behind you, right? Imagine if there's like 4 more tanks here and then JT and they're all rocking back and forth. He's never gonna fucking get a shot. So that's what we mean by baiting. Don't bait your teammates. Now that's baiting shots, okay? But another form of baiting is the call is made to do something, and you start going and you stop, or you go somewhere else, or you see something and you get scared, like I said, and you just hard stop. Or even sometimes, it's very rare, but it can happen, you just push right past where you need to go and you let your teammate die. So those are baiting, right? Baiting is when any reasonable player who would be playing with you would expect something from you and you just don't do it, right? That's kind of baiting your teammate. And so you can see how that would take form in a lot of ways. But generally, the baiting that is done is the rocking back and forth and fucking up other people's shots, and the getting scared and not pushing, and one tank commits and dies. That's probably what we're going to see the most. Oh, what can we go over next? Oh, so we can talk about pushing versus YOLOing versus over pushing and versus aggressing. So these are actually very different. Different callers may use the terms differently, but what is a push, right? Okay, so say we are, I'm trying to think of a good way to describe this. I'm not sure if proc on the stat sketch would be the best one. Okay, all right, let's go to Sand River. Okay, Sand River. All right, so say we are in the south, okay, and they're playing north, and they're playing defensive in north, right? Kind of like this. A standard setup will say bang, 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 bang. Just something like that. Could be more, could be less tanks. And the call is to push, okay? So pushing is different. So say the call is to push, okay? Well, you should realize that, okay, we're going to push the K line, right? And in this instance, the push should look like you get tanks to here and a couple tanks under here, okay? It doesn't mean fucking YOLO over like this, or get to this ridge and just keep going like a retard so you get killed and you get crossfired from every angle, right? A push means to push a certain way. And yes, it can be ambiguous sometimes, but this is where the brain power comes in, right? You have to understand that a push doesn't just mean yeet your tank into the middle of nowhere so you die. So let's go over a couple of scenarios. So if I were to call, for example, as me as a caller, if I'm calling this type of push, I expect us to push to here, start bleeding them, right? Artillery bleeds them, and then we go from there. Now, say they had less tanks here and it was something like this, okay? Then I might tell you guys to do something like an over push. And an over push would be, and I'd probably call this out because a lot of time over pushing is to a certain spot, you're just a bit further than you would normally push, but a reason for that. And for example, this over push would be you push past these guys, right? You're over pushing these guys into this ridge, right? So that you can then turn and kill these guys and then be haul down on everything here and then kill this guy quickly, right? So that would be an example of an over push if I were to call it. Remember, the terms can be slightly different per caller and per map, right? You have this, the players got to use their brain. If I were to call a YOLO, I mean, yeah, that at that point you're just going, right. And YOLO, you generally don't want to stop when someone calls for a YOLO, right? And I should preface it with, you want a smart YOLO, right? You don't want to just fucking yeet and stupidly. But if I'm calling a YOLO here, I'm expecting everyone to go past, right? And YOLO, right? You're going past and you get your shots on the move. You're not stopping, because if someone's calling a YOLO, probably they're seeing something develop on the other side of the map, or maybe something advantageous happening elsewhere, or non-advantageous, and you just got to go, right? You just got to go. And so that's what that would kind of be. Now, here's the term that I use a lot. I don't think many other callers do. At least, well, not in goons. Lots of callers use it, but now this is probably the most ambiguous term, and it's when I say aggress, right? What do I mean when we're aggressing? Well, generally it means take more of the map without either getting lit or taking damage. Okay, so in this instance, aggressing might mean pushing two chieftains under here before we actually start taking. Okay, so that could mean aggressing. Or if we have tanks up here, they're getting ready to come up right here and they're just aggressing forward a little bit. Obviously, in this instance, you're not looking to stay unlit, but you want to be taking more of the map, getting closer to the fight without taking damage. And a really good way to kind of understand what aggressing means is if I'm telling a flank or a couple tanks to start aggressing, it means, okay, you should think, okay, I'm probably about to push, right? So that's kind of what you should think. Aggressing doesn't mean push, but it means we're probably about to push, right? Maybe we just need to see one more thing, or we're waiting on a light, or waiting on an artillery stun, something like that, right? So I think this should help kind of illustrate the difference between some of those terms. And like I said, they are different between callers. Sometimes they may even be different between the same caller on different nights. But you just that's also just kind of learning the caller and feeling it out and doing and playing a lot and getting experience. But those terms, you can't like narrow them down, right? Otherwise, you'd have like 600 terms. You'd have like, do the Delta Bravo push, and then yes, everyone would know that the Delta Bravo push is pushing to exactly this ridge. Well, that's not how it works, right? You can't. We don't have a fucking NFL playbook, so you've just got to do your best as the player to understand, and the caller has to do their best to tell the players what to do. Although the caller has like maybe one sentence a lot of the time, right? So when the caller's already saying, okay, over push this, that's like 90% of their sentence. You can see how they don't have time a lot of the time, or the capability of just literally telling you more. A lot of you just got to go. So I think that should clear up a lot. Last thing we have to go over. So we went over the pushing, the peaking, the over peaking, echelon baiting. Oh yeah, the flipping of the ridge. All right, let's. Sand River is a good map for this. Actually, let's go north a bit on Sand River, because now this ridge isn't normally flipped in 15v15, but something in 5v5, for example. And actually, we're gonna use that. So say you're playing a 5v5 format, okay? And a general defense is to have a tank here. Say you're playing south, okay? On your defense, and you see this, and you do this, and maybe you push like this. Okay, we don't really care about these 4 tanks. That's just a like fairly standard 5v5 setup. Let's talk about north. Okay, you have not seen anything in the south, and you're controlling mid, and all of a sudden, you now see 2 tanks pull up here and like this. Okay, now when your caller tells you to flip the ridge as this guy, it quite literally means, well, on this side of the ridge, I'm fucked, right? But I'm flipping the ridge like this, and all of a sudden, I've only moved 10 meters, but I'm in a really powerful position, because now I'm hauled down on these guys. They can't shoot me, and I've got support, okay? On Himmels, let's just go through a really quick example. A lot of the time, what will happen, and what you're going to end up doing is, say you're in a Super Conk, a Chieftain, or whatever, what will happen is, if you're playing hard east, like over here type of deal, right, from my side, from the south, and you've got a couple tanks in mid, and you're not controlling them, maybe you've got a light on the 1-2, right, with that indirect control we're talking about, but they're pushing the 1-2, okay? The correct call, and it should be made almost always, is if you're hard taking the east, and these guys are in F3, well, they can't do anything, right? These guys just straight die as soon as they take the K line. So a lot of the time, the call will be made to flip this ridge right here, right? The call will say, okay, flip that 6-line ridge. And what that means is you are literally coming up, and you're gonna fucking drive over this ridge like this. And essentially now you can turn back around and you're safe, right? And now you can do what you were doing from here. Look down this way, look down mid, but you're safe doing it. And you can see a lot of the time flipping the ridge will get you shot at. Like if I'm here and I've got my ass to this direction in a chief, I'm gonna get shot at probably twice. But it's a fucking hell of a lot better than being right there where I just shot and just dying to this and complaining, right? So, and especially if you're flipping the ridge together, you're only going to take 4 or 5 shots generally, and in that type of situation, which I just showed, you can see why flipping the ridge is just so much more important. I think that should be about it. No one should really be confused. I think I did a pretty good job explaining. The hardest thing to understand, like I was saying, is the types of pushing and understanding. Oh, I lit JT on fire, and mostly understanding what a push really means in a specific instance. So we're going to end the video here. We'll just have the satisfaction of finishing JT off, because who doesn't like seeing a kill in World of Tanks? Boom. Alright. Thanks for watching, guys. Laters.